Hello everyone. The English we speak today is entirely different than it was spoken in Anglo-Saxon period, medieval period, Renaissance period, and so on. So, in fact, it has absorbed so many vocabulary from Latin language and then from Germanic languages, from French language, and from so many other languages which are spoken around the world. So, the focus of today's lecture is the development of the English language in the medieval period. So, the focus will be that how English evolves, how English developed in medieval period from 1066 till 1485. So we will see the influence of French language in this period, as we saw the influence of Germanic languages in Anglo-Saxon period. Similarly, we saw the influence of Latin language before the arrival or migration of Anglo-Saxon tribes. So it's totally different today how it was spoken in old time, old age, then medieval period, and then Renaissance, then modern. Renaissance period is also considered a modern age, then postmodern, and today in 21st century. Let's discuss in detail that how English language developed in medieval period. So this will be our part first in the development of English language. So there will be so many parts, perhaps 2 or 3 parts, because if I put all the relevant data and material in this lecture, that it will be a very lengthy lecture. So the Norman Conquest. So who were the Norman? They came from France. So we will see the French influence on English language now. So the Norman Conquest led to the great changes in the English language. So these Norman people, they brought French tradition and French culture, and similarly also French language. So we see that if in any period the people who are dominant, so of course the language will be also spoken. So we see that they brought like a tradition, culture, and language also from France, and then that French language primarily was spoken in England, and later on it was transformed into English language. So the great changes in the English language despite their Viking origins, because we know that these Viking first they settled in northern France, and then they came to England. So the origin of these Normans, that is Denmark or Viking. So by 1066 we see that the Normans spoke a dialect of Old French when they came to England, which they brought to England with them. And then gradually we see that we have totally a new English language, because this French language merged into English language, and this form or this makes a medieval English. Now Norman French. Norman French became the language of the English court, as we see that when the Britain they arrived to Indian subcontinent. So here also the English was the language of the courts, it was the language of aristocracy, it was the language of bureaucrat, it was the language of administration, and then later on it also had some place in common people. Similarly, that when French language arrived to England, it was the language of the court, of the government, business, of the new nobility, and of the scholars, the cooks, and the craft people that the Norman barons brought with them to serve their more refined needs. So these people like the cooks, the scholars, and the craft people were the Normans. They brought themselves to serve them. So they also spoke that French language. So the French was not the language of common people. right? The common people, they still they spoke English, fine. So Latin was the language of the church, and English was the language of the common people, and French was the language of the government, the courts, and the aristocratic class, as well as of the scholars, the cooks, and the craftsmen that the Normans they brought themselves. So there was division. And still we can find this division in many society. If you take the example of Indian subcontinent, India and Pakistan. So in the beginning, this English language was the language of the aristocratic class. And still, if you speak English in Pakistan or India, so you are considered a prestigious person. Okay, it's the language of the jobs, of the business, and people speak English to show their dominancy. So similarly that in the past, these aristocratic class, the government official, they also spoke French. Remember that Canterbury tale, that the prioress, okay, that she tried to speak French language because she wanted to show that she is a different being from the common people. If she spoke English language, then she would be considered a common person. So she wasn't a common person, even that she was, she belonged to ecclesiastical figure, right? Because she belonged to the church and she was supposed to speak Latin. But she avoided to speak Latin and rather she spoke French language because it was the language of dominancy. It was the language of, or it was a fashion in medieval period, right? Now, the use of English, where English was used. So the use of English became confined to the conquered, mostly peasant population. So the lower class, they spoke English language, right? You can see mostly peasant population. The serf people, S-E-R-F, serf people, who grow food and who grow, aggregate the land for these aristocratic class, right? So the English was the language of the common people. It was the language of the peasant. So, ever adoptable, however, English soon incorporated thousands of words and many grammatical conventions from where? From the French language, right? So these changes led to the development of Middle English, so a form much closer than Old English to the language we speak today. So this Middle English was close to the Old English rather than the English we speak today. Like if you pick up Canterbury Tale, so you will understand, but you will hardly understand it because the spelling, punctuation, grammatical pattern, structure is quite different. Yeah, it is close near to the Old English. If you pick up Old English, so I don't think that you will be able to understand it. It's entirely a different one. So this Middle English was closely related, or we can say that relevant to the Old English. It's quite different than the English we speak today.